Chapter 806, The Hunt, Part 3. There was a concept called the Dark Forest Rule 1, which essentially meant that the universe was like a dark forest and each civilization inside was a hunter with a gun, sneaking through the woods like ghosts. The hunters must exercise extra caution as the dark forest was full of hunters like themselves. Any signs of exposure might result in themselves being destroyed by other civilizations. Now, the situation in the forest was the same. Neither the Heavenly Network nor other organizations knew the exact location of each other, and the exposed teams would put themselves in an unfavorable position. This was also why the Heavenly Network Operations Squad was so careful when they approached the campfire. The squad leader could even imagine how other enemy teams approached the campfire like them. Then, they would be overjoyed seeing that there was only one boy here, and soon they would be engulfed in desperation. After all, who would dare to set up an open campfire in a dangerous forest like this? Naturally, people would be attracted to the fire as all of them were here to kill. It would be easier for them with each enemy erased from their map. In any case, it was not a PC game and no rewards could be claimed if you managed to be the last man alive. Instead, cutting your enemy's ears and bringing them back had a higher chance of getting you some rewards. That was what had truly happened on the battlefield. Lu Shu was exasperated when he saw the right ear of every Heavenly Network martyr at their campsite was missing. Now, Lu Shu smiled at the operations squad and explained, "It's more convenient this way. I call it the anti-dark forest rule. It saves me the trouble of having to go and find them myself." That rendered all the squad members in shock. It was their first time to hear such a plausible excuse for a fishing strategy like that. "You can try my method. It's very efficient," said Lu Shu. "It's okay. Thanks." The entire squad was dumbstruck. This boy's lack of fear stemmed from his extraordinary combat abilities. Judging from the number of corpses around him alone, he must have attracted at least 3 squads. Plus the enemies he claimed to have killed in the eastern parts of the forest, the boy might have slaughtered at least 4 squads. The squad leader gestured one of his members to investigate the situation in the east. The man came back, stuttering in shock. He destroyed at least 4 more squads over there. In other words, Lu Shu had killed more than 8 squads on one night with the same strategy. In the beginning, Lu Shu could simply sit there and wait for people to come for him. But as the corpses piled up around his campfire, fewer would fall for his trap. Thus, he had no other choice but to chase his prey. The squad leader was stunned. Was the boy really from the Heavenly Network? According to his knowledge, Heavenly King's Feng and Heavenly King Li had already returned to their camp for rest. Besides, all of them knew how Heavenly King's Feng and Li looked like. Lu Shu grinned. "What's your name?" "Ma Eugene 1, replied the squad leader nervously. Lu Shu mused, "You sound pretty rich. What's your level?" Ma Eugene replied, "Peak of Class C, I believe that I can ascend to Class B in half a year." Lu Shu nodded. "Now go back. The area in front is too dangerous for you." "No way," said Ma Eugene, "I'm a soldier and I fear no danger. We plan to ambush them at Ladder River and kill more enemies." Lu Shu studied Ma Eugene closely and smiled. "Head north. The Tigerback area is really too dangerous for you." "We are not cowards," said Ma Eugene, slightly annoyed. The enemy invasion into the Changbai Mountains had set the entire Heavenly Network on fire, and everyone was willing to risk their life in regaining the national territory. "If all of us back down because it's dangerous, who's going to fight for our country?" Lu Shu smiled. He stood up and patted the dust of his clothes. Then, he said, "Me." Under the squad's astonished stares, Lu Shu disappeared into the dark forest. His figure was tall and sharp, like a sword that pierced through the sky, allowing the first ray of sunlight to sip through the clouds. In the Luhai Lane, the capital, Nieting was ready to set off. A jeep was waiting for him in the lane, and the people following in attendance were elites like Hao Jichao. Dressed in the Heavenly Network uniform, Hao Jichao and the rest stood outside the courtyard quietly in respectful attention. They were the last group heading to the Changbai Mountains. Finally, the day that all of them were looking forward to had come. Now that Nieting's invisible storage equipment was no longer in use, he hung the black iron case on his back. Then, he faced the house and said, "I've got to go." The doors, who had remained shut for 2 days, suddenly opened widely. With a book in his hands, Shi Xuejin walked out and said, "Give me a moment and I'll find you a solution." "Wait, where's my walnut tree? My tall walnut tree. You should at least leave some trunks behind after you chopped it down, right?" It had been 2 days since the last time Shi Xuejin stepped out of his room. He had been looking for a remedy for Nieting. "Lu Shu took it away," Nieting said after a moment of silence. From Shi Xuejin's distress, plus 666. Then, Shi Xuejin reiterated, "Don't ever use it unless out of absolute necessity." "I know," said Nieting with a nod of understanding. "Lu Shu has probably entered the central area of Changbai Mountains because the front line has been pushed back eastward again. I will only use it as a last resort, but I cannot be that selfish because I have to protect the future of the Heavenly Network. Our people are risking their lives for our country, and I should be by their side." Shi Xuejin raised his hands a little and then lowered them again helplessly. "Never mind. I can't persuade you. You have known your own way since you were young." In fact, Shi Xuejin also knew himself well. Otherwise, he would not aspire to be well-versed in the 3 teachings and open a new yet risky road. Nieting turned and walked away. When he was about to reach the gate, he suddenly looked back and smiled. "I wasn't mistaken about Lu Shu, was I?" Shi Xuejin smiled too. "Did you not suspect that he's a demon king just a while ago? Although he can't destroy the earth, he's pretty talented at destroying good moods. Now that he's on a killing spree, it's no longer an exaggeration to call him the Demon King." Nieting pondered over it and asked, "What do you say if he becomes the next leader of the Heavenly Network?" Shi Xuejin replied impatiently, "He'll mess it up. Don't even think about it." "True." Nieting agreed. Then, he turned and boarded the car. As the fleet of black jeeps sped eastward, Nieting closed his eyes to rest on the rear seat. The logo on the cars was a clear sign that the fleet belonged to the Heavenly Network. After some hesitation, Hao Jichao, who was sitting on the front passenger seat, asked, "Heavenly King Nye, Lu Shu has killed countless people this time. Are you not worried that he may lose himself?" "Rest assured," replied Nieting calmly, "Heavenly King Shi once said that he has a heart of gold." Chapter 807, The Hunt, Part 4. Legend had it that there was a ghost fire in the Changbai Mountains that only appeared at night. The curious would be attracted to the orange fire involuntarily and then, they had never returned again. Well, Lu Shu thought that he had recreated a modern version of the story. On the second day after he entered the central areas of the mountains, dozens of more foreign practitioners lost their lives under Lu Shu's anti-dark forest rule. Lu Shu was elated as he thought about the huge amount of distress points he would receive when the rumor spread out. Wait a moment, could the person behind the legendary ghost fire have done the same thing as he? Probably not. Lu Shu shook his head. He believed that he was the first genius mind that had thought of this idea. Pitifully, though, he could not let the rumor spread out. The purpose of killing all who had seen his fire was to keep his identity a secret so that more ignorant souls would fall into his trap. Nevertheless, after the end of the war, Lu Shu could write a ghost story based on his real experience to gain some distress points. But even so, Lu Shu realized that this method would not work for long because many foreign practitioners were equipped with telecommunications devices, and his secret plan could well be exposed. By then, he would render himself a target for the organizations. The bonfire flickered in the darkness. Its orange flames looked warm and peaceful, drying up the dew-wet ground surrounding it. In the deep mountains, the low temperature and high humidity at night was very uncomfortable. However, considering the risk of setting up an open fire here, most people would choose to suffer in silence. Suddenly, Lu Shu heard a rustle of leaves. He looked up into the darkness and saw a Heavenly Network squad. Lu Shu grinned. "Come and warm yourselves." Yet, those people frowned at the dead bodies on the floor, as if pondering something. Lu Shu did not mind at all because it was understandable to be shocked by the sight. Lu Shu unfolded a map of the Changbai Mountains and made a few markings on it. The mountain range was too big. Therefore, Lu Shu had to confirm his current location and planned his future path every day. However, as the Heavenly Network squad drew near, none of them uttered a word. Besides, Lu Shu had a feeling that they were encircling him. Alarmed, Lu Shu suddenly looked up and, in the next instant, he bounced up by the support of his arms and sped backwards like an owl. Instantly a giant rock broke out of the ground at where Lu Shu was sitting, and the surrounding atmosphere was crushed and exploded. Lu Shu slowly stood up after he landed safely on the ground. Now that he thought back, he realized a few loopholes in the visitor's actions. Firstly, this place reached deep into the enemy's front line. Lu Shu had never seen any Heavenly Network's operation squads since the day before, and Ma Yojin's squad were the comrades he had met. Thus, the fact that he would meet a Heavenly Network squad coming towards him from the east was odd by itself. Besides, their energy waves had far exceeded the expected level of an operation squad. Yet, all of those details had slipped Lu Shu's mind earlier. Furthermore, it appeared to him that it was a well-organized mission as all of the squad members were Asians dressed in the Heavenly Network uniform. However, upon close inspection, the facial features of the last two members looked more like Southeast Asians. That could explain their reticence since the beginning, as they did not want to expose themselves through their awkward Chinese. Lu Shu's face turned cold. His comrades would have been in danger if they were to meet this squad before him. After all, with the poor visibility at night, who would expect that those in the same uniform as themselves could be their enemies too? Meanwhile, the squad seemed unsurprised that they had not managed to kill Lu Shu with their first move. Based on the piles of corpses beside the bonfire, they had a clear idea that this boy's abilities should not be underestimated. As a carefully selected team of elites, those people were not afraid of Lu Shu at all. They had the confidence to slaughter a heavenly king. Indeed, this squad was dangerous. They aimed to break through the defense line of the Heavenly Network by disguising as their men. Moreover, there was a Class B in the team. Now that more than half of the organizations in the world had gathered on the eastern slope of the Changbai Mountains, Lu Shu would not be surprised that they could form a squad of experts like this. The squad slowly closed in towards Lu Shu, but the latter had no intention to confront them head-on. Instead, he receded into the darkness of the forests and hissed with a cold laugh. "None of you deserves this uniform." Lu Shu turned and dashed into the depths of the forest. He sped through the uneven terrains agilely, while the squad was following closely behind. Lu Shu realized that they were experienced fighters too, which made the chase even more thrilling. However, Lu Shu's retreat into the forests was not because of his fear of them, but the fear of letting them escape. Indeed, it would be too difficult to slaughter all of them if they decided to scatter and run for their lives in the dark forest. Nevertheless, Lu Shu would never forgive a team that would bring potential threat to his fellow comrades. During the chase, the squad noticed that Lu Shu was not that fast, but he was incredibly familiar with the terrain. That made the squad members nervous. Their combat experience had taught them that good knowledge about a difficult landscape would give one a great advantage. For instance, they kept losing sight of Lu Shu and had to depend on traces left behind on the branches or fallen leaves to determine which direction he had gone to. Yet, at this moment, the leaves behind the squad suddenly exploded. Lu Shu jumped out and closed his fingers around the last person's neck. Unguarded, the man fell backwards under Lu Shu's forceful pull. He could not resist at all. As soon as the other members realized it, they immediately took action and attacked. However, the man was instantly thrown onto the floor and died due to the violent impact on his head. In the next instant, Lu Shu receded back into the darkness again. Before he disappeared, moonlight partially illuminated his face. For some reason, the squad believed that they had seen the boy smiling at them. Chapter 808, The Hunt, Part 5. The night had just begun. The tree leaves rustled in the wind, as if predators were hiding in the shadows, waiting for their prey. The squad leader stood beside the lifeless body of his member. He calmly examined the corpse with no signs of sadness or grief, as though he was a cold-blooded beast. In fact, it had only been a week since the formation of the squad. For the past week, they had only been practicing teamwork. Without any personal connections or camaraderie to begin with, they showed no condolences for their dead teammate from another organization. The leader squatted down for a closer inspection of the corpse. In fact, dead men talked. From the traces left on the man's wounds, he could tell that Lu Shu's instant explosive force was close to that of a Class B, and he was incredibly precise in terms of muscular strength. Moreover, the orderly footprints on the ground indicated that the man was very familiar with the effective application of his force. It seemed that they had once again underestimated their enemy's true power. The squad went into deep thoughts. The leader suddenly announced, "Confirmed. He is a Class B, or even a mid-Class B, fan out and be vigilant. Let's start the hunt." There was a tinge of exhilaration in his voice. Before the magical era, every member in the team could be called a war machine, but they were unable to unleash their desires in the peaceful years. Now was the best time for them. They could run after the strongest opponent in the field of their greatest forte. This was the most enjoyable entertainment ever. One of them bent down and cut away the body's right ear. Then, he laughed. "He's mine. I won't compete with you for the credits of that boy." He looked as if it was natural to do so because that was the last use of his team member in his life. The leader shot him a frosty look. "Pretty fast when you claim rewards. I'll cut off your ear too when you die." The man replied with a grin. "Then wait until I die first." In fact, no one questioned him during the entire process. After all, he could exchange the ear for one magical stone after he returned to the camp. That was the value of human lives on the battlefield, one magical stone, or even less. Of course, they had to behead a key person of the Heavenly Network and bring it back so as to claim higher rewards. This applied especially for Heavenly Kings. The squad moved on, following traces left by Lu Shu. With a surveillance specialist on the team, they were fast in picking up Lu Shu's marks. The specialist squatted down and picked up a wrapper. He studied it and nodded at the leader. "We are on the right track. This wrapper has just been discarded as it is dust-free." "Chase on," ordered the leader calmly. However, he was confused about the direction the boy was heading to. Instead of the Heavenly Network campsite in the west, he was running northward. Was he not going back to seek help? Did he want to die in the mountains? "Where is he going?" asked the leader. "There's a tributary on the other side of the mountain ahead. If he continued to run in the current direction, he's slowing down. We should be able to stop him before Urdeo if we pursue at top speed," the specialist analyzed. There was one more thing on the leader's mind. Currently, they were not far away from the Heavenly Lake. But the vegetation around the lake was sparse and scarce, unsuitable for hiding. So why was he heading there? Could there be an ambush set by the Heavenly Network? Not likely either, because the leader knew that two Class Bs from the Department of Faith Theory and the Phoenix Society had headed towards there just 4 days ago. Judging from the timeline, the Class Bs should have already gone past the Heavenly Lake and continued heading west. Thus, they would not join later. Although they could not unite with people from the Department of Faith Theory and the Phoenix Society to block the boy together, it was at least certain that no one from the Heavenly Network could be hiding there. The squad continued with the chase. In fact, some of the traces could have been erased. When you sped through a forest, you would inevitably break a few twigs or leaves. Therefore, it would be impossible to conceal the broken branches even if you managed to hide your footprints. Furthermore, in the specialist's eyes, Lu Shu's forest combat experience was too immature. He had hardly erased any of his traces, as if he totally had no idea what could expose his path. The pursuers laughed arrogantly and coldly. They would never lose such an easy target with their years of experience in the forests. However, at this moment, a shadow suddenly fell from the tree branches above them with clear intentions to kill. It was already too late when the man noticed a change in lighting on top of him. Just like the previous time, Lu Shu attacked barehandedly. The man tried to dodge and defend himself with his spine, which was the strongest part of the human body. Nevertheless, the punch on his spine was as powerful as a strike of lightning. Even those at the back of the team heard his bones cracking. At that instant, Lu Shu had fractured a Class C's backbone with a single punch. The man collapsed onto the muddy ground of rotten leaves as he lost his balance. Now he knew that it was a mistake to assume their enemy was a forest combat newbie. In fact, he was right that Lu Shu was bad at erasing his traces. Thus, he had resorted to the most tiring yet straightforward method of all. He ran at the top of his speeds before returning through the trees. To him, the distance between the tree branches was just a piece of cake. Thus, Lu Shu had created an illusion earlier that he was a slow runner, because he was not running at his top speed at all. Actually, their estimate that Lu Shu could be a mid-class beat still turned out to be a misjudgment. But Lu Shu had noticed something strange as well. The Class B leader was missing. All of a sudden, the entire ground caved in where Lu Shu was standing. As an Earth-type metahuman, the leader had hidden himself in the ground and intended to engulf Lu Shu in the quicksand when he was the least prepared. Right before this moment, the man with the broken spine was still alive, sighing that he could only spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. But now, to his horror, his leader was willing to sacrifice him in the quicksand as well. On the battlefield, all lives were delicate, and there was no trust to begin with. The quicksand swirled like a millstone, ready to eat Lu Shu alive. Yet, the Class B Earth-type metahuman could stand in close proximity and remained unharmed. But he had failed. Lu Shu had withdrawn from the sight the instant he broke his target's spine. Clearly he had no intention to stay there for even 1 second. Furthermore, he had confidently fended off the attacks from the other members before he left. It was as though none of them could pose any resistance to him. However, why did he have to flee if he was really so powerful? A bad hunch filled the squad leader's heart. There could only be 2 possibilities: either the boy was making a false show of his strength at this moment, or he was up to something bigger and bloodier since the very beginning. Chapter 809, Dirty Thing. Many people said that it was like spring all year round in Luo City. It was very suitable for living. But to Lu Shu, spring was like the 4 seasons in Luo City. When it was cold in winter, people did not want to go out. When it was hot in summer, it was ridiculously hot. Chen Zuan lay down in the house and fanned himself. He looked as if he had nothing else to live for. He was drenched in sweat. The newly installed air conditioning was of no use. The house that Lu Shu was living in had been renovated by the landlord. There was a heat insulator in the roof. The water pipes and electricity cables had also been replaced. But the house that Li Xianyi had lived in was different. Li Xianyi and Auntie Lu were not materialistic. They lived an ascetic life. Thus, the electricity cables in this old house could not support an air conditioner. If they turned on the air conditioner, the electricity would trip. Chen Zuan had spent almost all of this month's salary to buy the air conditioner. This broken and tattered place. Chen Zuan had never imagined that he would have to dig for his lunch. If he was in the capital, he would find the best restaurant to eat at. Chen Zuan was very annoyed. He was a standard tycoon, yet he could only fan himself in this place. Why could his childhood friends enjoy themselves in the capital? He had been chased out of his house to Luo's city. He had wanted to stick to Lu Shu, but Lu Shu had secretly ran off. But there were some benefits as well. Chen Zuan was now detached from that group of friends, as he was the only one out of all of them who was a Class B expert. He had to thank Lu Shu for this. Without Lu Shu, he would not have been able to join the Class Aptitude military training. He would not have been able to drink the magical liquid at the Kunlun Mountains either. After Chen Zuan had advanced to Class B, he wanted to return to the capital as soon as possible. He would gather all his old friends and bask in their praises. Chang Qiuqiao returned home. When Chen Zuan saw Chang Qiuqiao, he suddenly asked him in a nervous tone, "Are you brave?" Chang Qiuqiao was dumbfounded. "Quite." "What's wrong?" "Then let me tell you something." Chen Zuan sounded very mysterious. "There is a dirty thing one in our house." Chang Qiuqiao looked around. Was my grandma right? Chen Zuan was dumbfounded. What did your grandma say? Chang Qiuqiao laughed coldly. Ha! Ha! My grandma said that dogs can see things humans can't. Chen Zuan was rendered speechless. Brother Shu can speak like that because he is so strong, no one can defeat him. But if you speak like that, let me tell you, I am a Class B. Chang Qiuqiao slammed his hand on the table. He was upset. Get yourself together. You were the one who insisted on watching a horror movie last night. You started screaming when you saw just a few zombies. How can a Class B expert be afraid of zombies? Chen Zuan seemed like he did not want to continue with this subject. Back to the main point. There is really a ghost in our house. Since you said that you are brave, if you get rid of the ghost, I will acknowledge that you are braver than me. Chang Qiuqiao was very puzzled. Was there really a ghost in their house? But it was not bad that Chen Zuan would acknowledge that he was braver than Chen Zuan. Chang Qiuqiao happily asked, I can't see the ghost either. How should I get rid of it? You can see it. It's in the kitchen, Chen Zuan said with confidence. Chang Qiuqiao walked around the kitchen. He remained silent. Was the dirty thing you were talking about your undone dishes? Chen Zuan beamed in joy. That's right. If you wash them, I will acknowledge that you are braver than me. The species research specialization had been liberated again. Since they had no teacher, they had to come up with ways to pass the time. Zhao Yongchen came, but only for one lesson before he went to the Changbai Mountains as well. Chang Qiuqiao was still decent. He went to school out of his own initiative and attended classes from other specializations. On the other hand, Chen Zuan was completely free. He did not even go to school. Back then when Lu Shu and Lu Xiaoyu were around, they were very happy, playing in the laboratory. But now that Lu Shu had secretly disappeared, the entire species research specialization gave up playing. Why don't we go to the Changbai Mountains? Chen Zuan suddenly said, it feels empty now that Brother Shu has left. Anyway, no one is looking out for us. We might be able to help if we go to the Changbai Mountains. Ordinary students might create trouble, but we are not ordinary students. All the students in the cultivation college were being managed and controlled. The teachers were worried that their students would become enthusiastic and run off to the Changbai Mountains. But, the species research specialization had no teacher. Go to the Changbai Mountains? Chang Qiuqiao thought about it. To be honest, after Lu Shu left, it felt as if their lives were missing many things. Typically, when they had to make difficult decisions, they would unconsciously find Lu Shu. Now that Lu Shu was gone, it felt very strange. That's right. We can call Chao Qingxi and Xiaoyu. It would be a waste if the 3 Class Bs did not go and help. Chen Zuan felt a sense of belonging to the heavenly network. He did not feel assured knowing that many others were dying in the Changbai Mountains, while they were still going to school. If Chen Zuan was only a Class D or Class C, it would still be fine. But since he was a Class B, he could not enjoy this peace with a clear conscience. Furthermore, Chen Xuan suddenly felt as if the species research specialization had become an entire team. If they were able to work together in battle, it would definitely be very meaningful. Chen Xuan dragged Cheng Qiuqiao to find Lu Xiaoyu. They knocked on her door for a very long time, but there was no answer. I came back together with Xiaoyu. After she went in, I never heard the sound of the door opening, said Cheng Qiuqiao. Chen Xuan was dumbfounded. Did you forget that she has Earth-type abilities? I think that she might have gone to the Changbai Mountains herself. Chen Xuan felt that his was normal. The chemistry between Lu Shu and Lu Xiaoyu was so strong that they were like a whole. Since Lu Shu had gone to the Changbai Mountains, how could Lu Xiaoyu be at ease? He called Chao Qingxi. He felt that only Chao Qingxi could accompany them. But he suddenly realized that Chao Qingxi had turned off her phone. Chao Qingxi was always by her phone. Chen Xuan was as well, as this was an order by the Heavenly Kings to the class aptitude geniuses. They might allocate missions for them at any time. But Chao Qingxi had turned off her phone. Chen Xuan was slightly annoyed. Did Chao Qingxi go to the Changbai Mountains too? Why didn't she say anything? Cheng Qiuqiao thought about it and said, maybe they thought that you aren't reliable. Chen Xuan was unhappy. They didn't tell you either, right? Maybe it's because I'm involved with you, Cheng Qiuqiao said in a serious tone. Chapter 8:10, Chen Xuan's Intuition. If someone was too out of the ordinary, they would affect the people around them. For example, after Lu Shu became the backbone of the species research specialization, no matter whether it was Chen Xuan or Cheng Qiuqiao, their way of speaking unconsciously resembled that of Lu Shu's. One is marked by the company one keeps. Of course, there were exceptions. If there was someone from the northeast in a bedroom, the entire bedroom would speak like him. It might not be because that person was outstanding. It was simply because the way of speaking in the northeast was more impressive. Chen Xuan was a man of action who would leave immediately without hesitation. But Cheng Qiuqiao was more frank. He even went to the Luotian Cultivation College to request for leave before going. Chen Xuan was unhappy. If you ask for leave, will they still let you go? Haven't you seen all the students stuck in their classrooms? But Cheng Qiuqiao was still not reassured. What if they came back and found out that they had been expelled? How would he tell his parents? Chen Xuan looked as if he expected better from Cheng Qiuqiao. Brother Shu has become a heavenly king. What are you scared of? Chen Xuan suddenly had a sense of security, right? Lu Shu had become a heavenly king. Could they get away under the name of a heavenly king? When everyone else found out that Lu Shu had become a heavenly king, they were shocked. After all, it was very shocking for a heavenly king to appear from among the student population. But Chen Xuan's train of thought was very different. When he realized that Lu Shu was the mysterious ninth heavenly king, his first reaction was to suck up to him. You're wrong, Cheng Qiuqiao argued. Back then, Brother Shu was still an audit student. When Chen Xuan heard this, he felt that something like this had happened. But as for requesting leave, said Chen Xuan, you can still be flexible. How? Cheng Qiuqiao was curious. Yu Mingyu has taken over school affairs, right? Chen Xuan said. Yes. Where is he now? Chen Xuan asked. I heard that he went to the Changbai Mountains, said Cheng Qiuqiao. Right. We'll go to the Changbai Mountains and ask Yu Mingyu for leave there, said Chen Xuan cheerily. Cheng Qiuqiao was amazed by Chen Xuan's train of thought. How did he come up with that? Thus, the two of them headed on the long path towards the Changbai Mountains to ask Yu Mingyu for leave. When Chen Xuan sat on the plain and looked as the ground grew more and more distant, he could not help but think that Lu Shu had a very impressive aura. Even when Chen Xuan advanced to Class B, people were not as surprised. He did not celebrate for long either, as he was always chasing after a goal called Lu Shu. Lu Shu was too fast. Chen Zuan did not want to fall behind. Chen Zuan was full of ideas. If not, he would not have wanted to go to the Salt Lake remains and gain military achievements. He was also a very shrewd but timid person. He had always avoided danger in the remains. Chen Zuan always felt that he was a giant in terms of his thoughts, but a midget in terms of his actions. He had wanted to go to the Salt Lake remains, but when he actually got there, he was scared. It was as if he had professed love for what he really feared. He did not want to be a flower in a greenhouse, but when he actually encountered danger, he instinctively became timid. This was a very conflicting situation, which continued until he started to interact more with Lu Shu. To be honest, the Changbai Mountains were now very dangerous. Chen Zuan knew very well that even if he was a Class B, he might not be able to survive. But Chen Zuan felt that Lu Shu would be very lonely if he fought alone without support. He felt that he was the one who understood Lu Shu the best, besides Lu Xiaoyu. That young man was lonely but stubborn. He did not ask others for help so that he would not owe others anything. But Lu Shu was not born lonely. Even if the path to the Changbai Mountains was dangerous, Chen Zuan still wanted to go. There were times when he thought that the heroes described in stories or history books were too distant. Chen Zuan felt like he was now experiencing history. Perhaps in the far future, he might appear in the history books with Lu Shu. How would the history books depict him? Chen Zuan excitedly told Cheng Qiuqiu this. If Brother Shu becomes even more amazing, he will definitely be recorded in the history of the realm of cultivation. We will definitely appear as the friends who accompanied him in battle. How would the history books depict us then? When Cheng Qiuqiu heard this, his eyes lit up. They would say that you love to eat, that you are shameless, that you often retract your move in chess, that you snore in your sleep, and that your feet stink. Chen Zuan's expression darkened. My feet don't stink.
Ha! Ha!
Cheng Qiuqiu laughed coldly. You can be stubborn and defend yourself. I covered you with the blanket, but who secretly took off the blanket at night? Last week, Cheng Qiuqiu had said that Chen Zuan's feet were stinky. Chen Zuan denied this and claimed that he could not smell anything. Cheng Qiuqiu thus secretly covered Chen Zuan with the blanket that he used to cover his feet. Chen Zuan could not bear the smell and woke up. The plane landed in Sheng City, Jizhou. Chen Zuan and Cheng Qiuqiu had wanted to fly directly to the Changbai Mountains airport, but the flights there had been cancelled because of the fight in the realm of cultivation. Thus, they had no choice but to rent a car and drive there. It was easy for them to enter the restricted area. They were of a rather high rank, thus they could enter easily. When they reached the campsite, Chen Zuan and Cheng Qiuqiu felt the atmosphere of a true war as they drove in. The place was either full of members from the Heavenly Network or full of goods and materials. Everyone in the campsite seemed to be in a rush. There was even a massive army tent in the middle. People were constantly moving in and out. At the same time, they saw a small team who were preparing rations to enter the mountains. On the way, they heard people talking about the war deep within the mountains. It seemed very severe. At that moment, Chen Zuan suddenly heard someone say, "One of the teams is very aggressive. I heard that we have broken through the Ladder River and the Tiger Back." One of the teams went there and they said that all they saw were dead bodies. But no one knew who did it. I heard that too. Our line of defense had been pushed back, but some team had forcibly opened up another route. The strange thing is, when our troops returned, no one said that they had gone there. Strange. Maybe our current situation is still good. They are probably still hunting down people deep in the mountains. They are really aggressive. Could it be the secret team formed by the Heavenly Network? Perhaps. We have a lot of Class B experts in the Heavenly Network. Chen Zuan overheard this. Suddenly, he turned to Cheng Qiuqiu and said, I think Brother Shu might be on this line of defense.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens.